It's not something that's entirely a fair system. Like, it's not fair. It's like who you know and your personality. I'm really turning this podcast into one sad thing.
Hello and welcome to One Cool Thing, a podcast from indie game studio Fabrique, hosted by me, Hannah Nicklin. One Cool Thing is a podcast speaking with people in and around video games about one cool thing not from games, which is super fascinating them right now. So I'll introduce them and their practice, talk about how the one cool thing they've brought into the conversation affects them, and consider how it shapes how they think about their work. It's a chance to hear more about the practices of cool folks working in games, and hopefully somewhere where we can all reflect on how we think about how we make things. So without further ado, let's meet our next guest. I am especially excited to introduce Sharna Jackson to you all as the first guest on the podcast who has worked with us on Fabrique's recently announced brand new story-driven adventure game Saltsea Chronicles. We have had Josie, Halima, and Doug, but that was while things were top secret, but we are now out in the open, and I'm really excited to welcome Sharna, who worked with us as one of the key members of the writer's room. Sharna is much else besides, though, as well as being a game writer. She is an artistic director, author, and all-round awesome storyteller. British, but currently living in Rotterdam, and before writing full-time was artistic director at Sight Gallery in Sheffield, on the board of Sheffield Doc Fest, which is a film festival that focuses on documentaries, and an advisor on several projects centering children. She says on her website, quote, "I'm trying to help kids thrive, especially those who are disengaged, disadvantaged, and generally don't think arts, culture, reading, and writing is for them. It is. I will make it so." Love the confidence there. Her award-winning books for children around tweenish age, 10 plus, as well as being great fun, are also interested in lifting up voices lesser heard in fiction. So, for example, High Rise Mystery features the first Black detective duo in children's fiction. And you should absolutely check out Sharna's feed on World Book Day as she reposts all the kids she's inspired as they dress up as characters from her books. It is an absolute delight. Finally, a shout out to her work as the curator of Ensemble, a UK-based exhibition which celebrates UK games talent from Black, Asian, and underrepresented ethnicities. Wow. Okay, Sharna, you're in the house. How do you feel about that intro?
I'd like to know them. So that's really cool. Thank you.
Welcome. It's so exciting to have you here. And again, as I said, like someone who's worked on the game, now we can actually talk about working on the game.
Yay. I love talking about working on the game, actually.
And in that spirit, I am really excited for you to tell everyone what your one cool thing is. So let's just go ahead and jump right in.
Yeah, so my one cool thing is barges. Barges being boats. Boats particularly being Dutch barges, preferably built between like 1850 and 1926. I'm very specific about my barges. I'm very, very much obsessed with barges.
And it's very topical for us because we have just spent 3.5 years making a game which is in part set on a boat. It follows a crew as they uncover a mystery, but they are sailing from point to point as they do so. And one of the reasons it's been so wonderful to have you on a team is not only are you a fan of barges, you do in fact live on one. Is that correct?
I do live on a barge. I live on a barge in Rotterdam, in Odegraven, which is right in the center of the city. It's my ship, Anna Maria, was built in 1897, so she's really old. And so we are moored in the historic harbour. But yeah, going back to Saltsea Chronicles, because I can't help myself. It was when Hannah told me about the project, she opened the document. It was like, so there's a crew of people. I was like, yeah, there we go. Crew of people on a barge. I am 100% in. But yes, I live on a barge. And this barge, 1897. 29.95 meters long by 5.53 meters wide.
That's just I'm looking at you. You're not looking at any notes. No. I wrote those things down because I did some research, but you're spot on. I mean,
yeah, I know my ship very well. DAF engine, and Yeah, I love the ship. I bought this boat. I have lived on boats before. This is my fourth boat. I bought this boat in Rotterdam in 2014. 2014, I think it was November 2014. It was bonfire night.
Mm.
And and so yeah, here almost 10 years later.
And so just let's sort of help the listening audience imagine this boat. So I've looked at some pictures online. It's got two masts, right? So maybe when people imagine a barge, they might think of the sort of long boat of canal history, but it's an inland boat of a slightly different variety, right?
Yeah, that's right. So when I tell people I live on a boat, they're like, "Wow, you're so stupid." And also, what does it look like? And they assume it's like for people who listen to this in the UK, like a narrow boat. So it's a long boat that like Rosie and Jim, which is a children's program. But no, it's not like that. Think more the Cutty Sark, and you're more in that direction. Yeah, it did have two masts. I craned those masts out 2 summers ago because the wood was rotting and I
Okay.
was very scared that they would fall and
Bad when a
crush.
mast falls on you in general.
Yeah, it wouldn't be pleasant. So I craned them out, which was an ordeal. But yeah, so imagine like the Cuzzy Sark, but with a bit of a minimalist make under. Two masts, really long. It's called a clipper, a sailing clipper, which means that the bow goes up slightly at the front. So it really looks like a traditional ship. If you were to draw a ship when you were, say, 5 or 6, it's kind of exactly what it looks like. And maybe that's why I was so attracted to it in the first place.
And so I wonder, like the inside of the barge. So you sort of refitted it for living in rather than for, transporting goods, obviously. What does it like look and feel like on the inside?
Okay, so I'll give you a little tour. So you walk, well, first of all, you have to walk down the gangplank
Mhm.
because that's what we have. So we're in a harbour. There's no like sexy pontoon or locked gate. You're straight onto the quayside, onto the boat via the gangplank, very, very Captain Hook esque. And you walk down the gunwale, which is the side of the boat, and then you come to the back deck. You open the doors and you're into the deck house. And the deck house is like an upstairs living room at the moment, but it's lots of shoes in there. But I've got a nice saving. I just bought a mirror from Hay, so I'm trying to change my ways and make it really nice. Trying to be a grown up person. So you come and you've got this deck house. If you look behind you, there's a bedroom. Actually, go down some steps and there's a bedroom under the back deck, which is a bedroom I never go in because the last owner put a water bed in there. And I think having a water bed on a boat is incredibly weird. So I don't go on
Like how
it.
I feel when I put oat milk on porridge to make my
Yeah, I
porridge.
mean,
It's like this
I
is like cannibalism in a way that makes me feel weird.
yeah, it's like oat squared, like oatception. And that's kind of it's kind of like that's what it's like. I'm like, why would you have a waterbed on a boat? Anyway, it's not my business, not my problem. I don't look down there. Then you turn around, you come down the stairs. There's one bathroom. There, the main bathroom, and then you walk in, and it's an open plan kitchen, living room. You walk through there. You walk through that room. There is another little tiny bathroom, and then one, two, three, 4 bedrooms at the very back. So it's big, but when I say it's a bedroom, it's not like house bedroom, but they've got double beds in them, so it's plenty of space. There's plenty of space on the barge, and people are like really shocked when they come in because Anna Maria's got quite a low profile. You don't really notice her amongst the other boats in the harbour, and then they come in, people are like, "Oh my god, it's so big in here! I can't believe it! How much did it cost you? Whatever, maybe I should buy a boat as well." To which I say, "Don't do it," but also, but it's no, it's lots of fun, and I like the decoration in here. It's kind of like a mid-century lodge. So it's got bright orange, very like Dutch national uh coloured cabinets, which I haven't changed, and I really like them. I think it was what sold me on getting the boat. I was like, oh yeah, those cabinets are built in, and I love them. So that was that on that. Yeah.
Wonderful. And so thank you for the mini tour of Anna Marie.
Pleasure.
And I wonder what you just mentioned there that you've lived on a number of boats.
Yeah.
And I wonder if you could take me back to the very beginning of your boat life. Like, what is it that sort of tempted you in the first of time to decide to live on a boat?
Right. So it was a blend of like optimism and poverty. So I grew up in a town called Luton, which has a little river. It's got River Lee, which actually does a flow into the Thames. And I really liked water when I was growing up, drinking it, sitting in it, swimming in it, being next to it. And I was like, I really like water. And then I went to Sussex University, which is in Brighton, and I really loved being by the beach. And I had a house near the beach, and I could look out, craning myself out of my tiny bathroom window, and I could see the beach. And just like having the expanse in front of you, like was really calming for me. And just like being bit by water and like thinking about possibility, and it was just, yeah, really nice. I think some people think, oh no, it's the end of the earth, but for me it represented possibility, and so I loved it. And then I moved to London after I was in Brighton, and one of the first flats that I rented had a little round window. It was like a porthole, and I was like, oh, maybe I could live on a boat. What would that be like? And at the place where I worked, was at Tate Gallery at the time, I was paid in like pennies and promises. I was looked up. I was like, oh, looking at Zoopla as it was in that day, and I was like, I wonder what I could afford as a mortgage. And I called the bank one day, and they were like, yeah, 45 pence. And then so I was looking at the end of this website, and I saw a boat, and it all just like came together. And then that just sparked off like an intense interest in boats. So I spend like weekends going to the docks in London, just like seeing all the different types of barges. And then one came up that was a really good price. It was like £35,000, and it was moored in Barking Creek, and she was called Tuppence. It was a tiny, tiny little boat. I was like, I would much prefer to live here than in any house. So I cut a deal with the guy who was selling it. I said, give me like 3 months to gather the money for a marine mortgage deposit, but I'll rent it from you and you can deduct that from the price. And he was like, yeah, okay. Because when you meet boat owners, it's there are marine mortgages, but it's more of like a matchmaking kind of process between you and the owner. So I remember going to see one boat in Kent that I really liked, but it was a wooden boat, so I couldn't get any kind of finance on it. And it was all wine and cheese and driving you around in Range Rovers or Land Rovers or whatever. And it was just really, not the Land Rover bit wasn't the best bit, but the cheese was great. And so like doing that was like, it was really nice. It's like, why do you want to live here? What could you do? Do I see you here? And so it's that kind of relationship that you build with the people that you buy the boats from. Back to 2008. And yeah, so I bought Tuppence, had Tuppence for about 6 months. And then somebody messaged me and said, I wanted that boat, but you got there first. How do you feel about selling it? And I was like, okay. So I jacked up the price and I was like, okay, here you go. And then she was like, yay. And then she took the boat. And then I went over to the Netherlands and I bought a boat called Initio from a town called Harlingen, which is in the north of the Netherlands. And I lived on that boat for about 8 years. And this boat was raggedy. And I didn't have any money to make it better. And then I had my son at this time, and my son turned to about 3, and he could really talk. And he was just like, why do we live here? Like, why do we live like this? Why are you chopping wood? Like, why are you like burning fires? Like, why are you living like a Victorian when you don't have to? And I was like, good point. So then I had to stop for a minute to get off the boat tip. But I did have a little, I conned my dad into getting me another one, a tiny little Norfolk Broads cruiser that was called Gish. I renamed her Racine, and I had that as well. So at one time I had 2 boats. I thought I was so cool. I had an armada, and the plan was to stay on the little one while I renovated the big one. But then my son just put his foot down, and that was that. So I got rid of all of it. It was a really sad day. And then literally about 24 hours later, I saw Anna Maria on Apollo Duck, which is a place you go to look at boats. And I was like, I really like that boat. And I watched her come down and down in price. And then I went over and saw her, and I was like, yes, my boat. I came in, and like she was dilapidated, and people hadn't lived in her for a little while. So there was like huge spider webs and like mold. I just sighed and was like, well, this is what I've got to deal with now. And that was it. It was like the boat chooses you. It's not
Mm.
like you choose a boat, the boat chooses you. And she chose me. She reached out to me when she knew I was boatless in that short 24-hour period where I had no vessel. She was like, come over to Rotterdam and come and claim me. So I got a boat because I have a deep appreciation for the craft of them and the conversation and community that you have around them. So for me, it's like living in an artifact that you have responsibility for a certain period of time. It's almost like curation in a way. You have to really look after it because they will live beyond you, and you need to pass it on to somebody else who you hope will take good care of it. You do see people selling their boats on, and then they get like cut up, and the lines are ruined, and they gut them, and and you're a bit like, oh god, like why did you get that boat if you're going to do that? But that's not my business, and they're not people, they're ships. So, but yeah, so it's like living in an artifact, and they go through you. And I think living on a boat is really romanticized. And people think it's cool, and we're on one cool thing. So what can I say? But I think that especially in where I'm moored in Oldehave, it's surrounded by bars, and I'm right in front of Europe's first skyscraper, Het House, which is directly in front of me. So it's a historical area. So people come past and they see in the summer, and they might see you sitting on the back deck eating your breakfast or whatever, and they think, wow, what a life you have. Like, oh, it's amazing. But it's not, because, it's really nice for about, I don't know, 6 weeks of the year.
Mm-hmm.
And the rest of the time, it's either too hot when you're like baking inside, and we're getting temperatures of 40 degrees in here, which is terrible and terrible for the dog, or it's freezing. And you're like, diesel, you don't really want to burn diesel because it's not great and it's expensive. You don't want to burn wood because it's not great to do that. So it's like, it's a tricky thing, and it kind of, it pushes you to question like what you're about, because what I love about it is the idea that I can just unrope it from the quayside and the boat next to it and turn on the engine, and I can just sail away and go somewhere else. The reality is I won't do that. It's quite an endeavor to take her out. And I like the idea that it's self-contained. But yeah, there are things like about the traditionality of it that are like, So we're all moving to, we're thinking, lots of people in the dock are thinking about, solar panels and how do we become more sustainable. So that's a really interesting conversation. And the harbour are like, oh, but you've got to retain its traditional nature. That's how you get to live here for peanuts. So yeah, it's a constant trade-off and balance. And it's, I think, wherever you live, there are things that you concern you. But I think with a boat, you really give yourself work. It's not this chilled out, relaxed experience. It's like constant worry and rust.
I think that, traditionally communities, I mean, I say traditionally, maybe what I mean is historically, have been much more itinerant. But the way that we've constructed nations and borders and all of that stuff, as we see from the like terrible mistreatment of the GRT community, like itineracy, the ability to move and go somewhere else and live somewhere else is really, really built against in terms of the design of the systems of like, being registered to a place, schools, like hospitals, addresses, banks, all of that kind of thing. Everything about modern life is designed to make it itineracy in a like just not an easy way to live. So I can imagine all of those things, sort of the idea and the romance of boat living kind of comes up against the state wanting you to act like a house.
Yeah, yes. Yeah, yes, that's really true. And it works a bit differently in the UK. Here, a lot of the boats do go out and they absolutely spend summers away and going more up. There's a really cool lady opposite me, and she yeah, every time it gets hot, she's out. She's like, bye for the summer, and she goes, and someone else comes in a spot. In the UK, there's like kind of a few different kind of status that you have. You have constant cruisers who have to move. Well, in my day, you had to move once a week, and you wouldn't pay any more in fee. You just had to move around the system. If you're in a dock, you have a leisure license, which means that you don't live on the boat, but you can come and spend like an X amount of days per year, or you have residential status where you are like a house, when it's like, okay, now you pay council tax and now you vote here and da, 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 da. So yeah, you have different status C's. I was moored in South Dock Marina in Southeast London for about 8 years, but I was on the waiting list for 8 years before that, and it was only until they cleaned up their management in the harbour that I got a chance to get into the dock. So yeah, it's not something that's entirely a fair system. Like, it's not fair. It's like who you know, and like, yeah, and your personality. I'm really turning this podcast into one sad thing.
Well, I was gonna nudge us, I have to say. Having, done the necessary dispelling of the romanticism of the idea of living on a boat, I would love to hear like moments of joy, or like, just ways in which it shaped how you live, which you find really rewarding.
Okay, so no, I love the historical nature of them, even though that's fraught, and I love being able to trace it back. And on the previous boat I had, Initio, the woman who was born in it. So this boat was built in 1908, Initio, and there's a family picture of all of the family, and she was born on the ship, and just before she died she sent me an email of lots of pictures and things, and it was just such a nice thing to have. So I've got pictures from, like, here's the ship in 1945 in a massive storm, and it's way down with linseed as it traverses through the inland waters of the Netherlands, and that's really, really nice. I love I love I just love the boats. I love the boats. I love the shape. I love the construction. I love the rivets. I love like the bilge. I love the way, like, I love the way the engine room hatch opens. And so it's like little things that I really like about them. And I do like raising my son. My son's 13, and he's mostly lived on boats, but lived in houses. I think he would prefer a house. But it's really nice for him when his friends come over and they find him, like, I'm not saying, oh, he needs it to make him more interesting or anything like that, but it's really exciting for them as well, because they come over and they play, and in the summer when it's warm they all jump into the dock and they have barbecues on the back, and it's like a really nice thing to do. What's the Dutch word? Gezellig. Is that, yeah, that's the Dutch version of hygge, isn't it? I can't say hygge. Yeah, gezellig. So
Hygge,
that's
hygge, I think it's the Danish.
Okay, yeah, that one. And gezellig. So it's really nice. And yeah, the thought of being able to move, and I mean, this ship did cross the channel twice. So I took it from Rotterdam to Kent 2015, and then came back to Rotterdam in 2017. So it's done.
Do you just sail it across the channel, or does a boat tow you literally just take this inland water boat across the channel?
Yeah, you can. You have to wait until, like, the winds at, like, it can't be higher than the 3 on the scale, and you wait for a window in the weather. So you have to, like, okay, now. Yeah, but so I got this boat, it got as far as the channel, and then the team that I had sailing it, they were used to sportier boats, and they got into trouble and had to get towed back at great cost. That was fun. It was a really fun period. Yeah, got towed back at great cost, and they tried again, and then I didn't trust them. So then I got this guy that I know called Alan Pratt, I hope he's still around. And I said, go and take your boat, Christine, and go and get my boat. So he did. So it did get towed in the end, but it can do it. And
Okay.
he towed it over to Faversham in Kent. He was just like, I don't know what the problem was with those guys. It runs fine. Look, because he had to drop his boat off at the creek mouth and then take mine up the creek because it's too narrow to like be towing. So he's just like, well, there's no problem. He's like, those guys were just robbing you, I think. So probably. But yeah, so it's had both. And yeah, I do like it. I do really appreciate it. And because this boat is large, it was cheap to buy. So yeah, because only stupid people want 30-meter boats because it's so much maintenance. Like, why would you, if you were sane, you wouldn't have it. So it was a really good deal I had on this ship. And so that has allowed me to be able to take on projects and work on projects that I would never have been able to for like, I mean, again, this is like, okay, we shouldn't work for free or anything like that. And I don't work for free, but I can do less, or I can do passion projects because the crushing need to make rent is not there for me anymore because of this boat. So I'm like incredibly grateful for the ship. But I've got a lot of work to do.
You've linked there a little bit to work, and that's a really useful sort of segue into the sort of second half of the podcast. So thank you so much for bringing, barges and boat life to us. And I thought I was really interesting here you talk about the act of owning something this sort of historical as a kind of act of, like, a practical act of curation, considering your work in sort of museums and that kind of thing. But also maybe we turn to your work in video games. I think it's fairly obvious, I suppose, how in one way boat life has impacted your work in games, because you just helped us write a story game which is in part set in the living in a boat by a crew.
Yeah, and like it's been, like I said, like, well, maybe he didn't hear me say it, or we cut it out. When you said it's a corner boat, I was like, yes. Amazing, because yeah, I know what it means to be on a boat with too many people sometimes, and what it means to be in close proximity with people. And I just thought, oh gosh, what like an amazing space for storytelling, because I write children's books, and I'm actually writing one now about a boat, but I haven't done that historically. I just because I've lived on boats and had boats for so long, it's not I don't tend to tell people about it too much. It's like, if it comes up, I'll tell them. But as soon as you say, I live on a boat, then it becomes like the focus of the conversation. But yeah, so it's such a good source for storytelling. So I was really delighted by it. And who gets what bunk? Because bunks are super important. And yeah, who gets what cabin? And how do you, in a power cut? And in our world especially, there isn't like electricity which is plug in. Like, how do you maintain systems, and what does that mean, and like what happens when the heads or the toilets get blocked? Who's responsible for cleaning the lines, and who like unclogs, who like pumps up the bilge, and why do they do it? So there's lots of things. I was just so drawn to the boat in our game, which is called the Kelpie.
And there's something really so in storytelling and TV, people often talk about a bottle episode, and that's basically everyone being trapped in a lift together for a whole episode, or people being, I don't know, in an episode of Bones, she drills into a bone and a pathogen is released, and they all have to quarantine for Christmas Eve. That's a Literal Bones episode. And the pressure of being confined with other people, of having to live cheek by jowl with other people, is a really like interesting test of people, and it pushes people together, and it makes them have to address conflict, and it or frictions, it creates friction which allows character to emerge. Like, and I think although not every, although there's the freedom of being able to visit locations in the game, there's also a lot of what it means to press people into close confinement with one another.
Totally agree with that. I'm just being careful what I say. I don't want to spoil anything, but yeah, it's really important to choose your boat mates wisely. And yeah, because like you say, the close quarters, and yeah, yes, but yeah, even going to the different locations, like for me, going from a mooring in central London to a mooring in central Rotterdam, you think, oh, same, it's completely different. And yeah, coming across different communities and then finding your space in that community, and like how do you get in, how do you get involved or not, is like it's a really delicate thing to work out. It's like a choreography constantly with this boat and the people that you encounter with it, and that's exactly what our game's like. I love our game.
I also love our game. I hope everyone else will too. And I should say that we also we like a lot of your boat living has been inland living.
Mm.
We also are super aware that kind of being at sea is a different
Mm.
kind of boat experience, and so we also had two experts in being at sea, Ida Schroeder and Anna Elizabeth Thompson, both of whom had sort of sailed extensively at sea. They came and we did interviews with them as a writer's room, essentially, and sort of tried to get a bunch of information out of them about what it feels like to sort of be at sea. And then also there was a really like influential on me, which I think I shared with the writer's room, log from a game development duo. I think they go by 100 Rabbits. Rec and Devine have this really incredible log of their 51-day journey from Japan to Canada, which they which I can link to in the liner notes. But like sometimes it's like, oh, we're running out of fruit and vegetables, and sometimes it's like a wave nearly drowned me today. I thought I was going to die. Like just really,
Yeah.
really intense kind of like way of living, and it's very much shapes them and their philosophy. And in a similar way, we took that on board as well, and like everything about how these people live is shaped by boat life. So down to their language, like the imagery they'll use, their greetings are often shaped by the sea and the flooded earth on which they live. Like a common greeting is fair weather and calm seas in the world, or you might say bilge as a swear
Bilge.
word, or rusted is like a common swear word in the game as well, because obviously like salt water is a really big part of their lives.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And that log was so, yeah, please do link it because it was so incredible. And yeah, I'm very much an inland waters person, and there's definitely like a hierarchy, absolutely, between like the inland people and the people that go to sea, because it's really easy for me. I just jump off the jump off the gangplank and I'm in the center of Rotterdam. There's an Albert Heijn in the Markthal, and I'm very, it's very easy for me. And literally yesterday I was talking to my son's dad about this. We're like, would should we move to the other side of town? Should we go to Delft Harbour? And I was like, oh gosh, no. It's like literally like a kilometer away. And I'm like, no, I can't. I couldn't possibly, like, because I've got Albert Heijn, I've got my organic shop there. Like, why would I do that? And it's just oh my goodness me. Imagine if I was at sea. Terrible. Really terrible. Absolutely terrible.
With that, so I wonder if we sort of getting towards the end of the recording now. I wondered if you wanted to offer something to our listening audience for them about, how they live or how they make things from your sort of experience of living in the curatorial journey of Anna Marie and other boats.
I mean, if you want to live on a boat, you should absolutely try it. And I know that might be inaccessible for a lot of people, but the boat community is very open to bartering and trading and experience. And lots of people are like, you can come and boat sit while I go away, or do you want to join the crew as I sail around? So go on websites like Apollo Duck and go to the boating communities that may be near you if that's of interest. But I think for me, it's almost like bigger than boats. It's almost like I I never want I never wanted to live in a house. I never wanted to live in a house. Not really. And I love boats and I love water. But if I didn't, I want to live in a mill or a lighthouse or like something like that. And I feel like, if you it's just very, yeah, if you can, don't don't get trapped into thinking you have to do things a certain way is more of my advice. Yeah.
That's the heart of it, right? And like I was just thinking as I was preparing for the podcast, how many people I actually know who live on boats. And that's a lot to do with creatives and writers who cannot afford to live in the centers of city, but that being where the majority of the work is for creatives and writers. And that there's something there about, if you're not from a moneyed background, there is a lot to be said for, in order to survive these systems which are unjust, and obviously we should bring the systems down as well. But one of the core things is like how much can you reduce your living costs, right? And those inevitable kind of working for free or not very much things that you do at the beginning of a career, if you live in a van or you live on a boat, can be like really sort of different. I mean, obviously if you have caring responsibilities, but you've had a kid on a boat, presumably he learned to swim quite early.
Very, very, very early. And yeah, he was rude as hell to me about it. But now he appreciates it. But I think about that totally, because I'm like, how will I help you to get a house if that's what you want? And I'm just like, well, I'll just buy another little boat and I'll put it next to mine and we can always be together. And he's like, sounds like hell. Sounds like absolute hell.
Yeah.
So I'm like, yeah.
I just, along with your encouragement, I will just add a piece of caution, particularly for gender marginalized folks or people of color who might be treated poorly by systemic hegemony, etc., and society. There are quite a lot of jobs you actually can find on boats where people just recruit people to be like, they're very simple, just like a waiter and waitress on a fancy like seafaring boat. But just be careful and make sure that if you're like, yeah, I'm young, I'm a creative, I could maybe get a lot of money working on a boat in the summer and then spend my winter writing. Make sure that you get reviews of captains, because I know there's been a lot of sort of scandals about because there, the law at sea is one thing, and then there's the fact that you can't escape the boat, and and it produces atmospheres which can sometimes be used to abuse people. And so part of the important thing to do if you're like going on forums and finding a really well-paid job, essentially like being a waiter to rich people, where you get to live on a boat and visit a bunch of Caribbean islands, for example, just make sure that you're asking questions about the captain in question, because I know some people have had really poor experiences, but it doesn't mean, I also know people who have like had a great time with that being their summer job and stuff. So just placing that note of caution there. I think it was in the news recently as well. One of those, like I just find doing this podcast that people bring up like such a wonderful variety of stuff, and then it's that Slumdog Millionaire thing of like going, oh, I do know someone who actually spent 10 years being the person who like essentially works as a waitress on a boat and like had a really incredible life actually. And you just find all these things connecting, which is why I know about that caution as well. So, however, I wonder if there is anything else that you've sort of felt like you wanted to come in and say about barges and boat life to the sort of listening audience before we wrap up.
The only thing is, come and visit me in Rotterdam and have a look and then see if you like it, because two or three people now have got boats and have come to Rotterdam because of me. So if you're like really teetering on the edge of making a decision, I will push you in the direction that you want to go. I'm very good at that. So you're very welcome to come along and say hello, and we can talk about it. But yeah, it's carve out the life for you that you can with the things that you have. Oh my God, that is so vague.
No, and I'm going to add to your bio now, Sharna Jackson, boat enabler.
Yeah, ooh, that's my finest job.
Is there anything that you would like to promote? Any socials that we should follow you on?
I would like to promote a little game I've been working on. It's called Salt Sea Chronicles.
Salt Sea Chronicles.
Yeah,
sorry, I hear that. What's it?
Yeah, Salt Sea Chronicles out in 2023. If you could wish list it on PS5
and Steam,
and it's coming out on Nintendo Switch too. Oh, so yes, there. And but if you want to, I don't really talk about the boat or post pictures of it because I'm just not very good at social media anymore. I was good in 2008, but now I'm just old. So I'm at Sharna Jackson everywhere.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of One Cool Thing from Digue de Fabrique. A little chattier than usual, I imagine, because Sharna and I have been working together super closely. So obviously we have a certain amount of chat. So I hope that was enjoyable and not distracting. As usual, leave a rating or review where you can. It really matters. And it's a brilliant way to say thank you. And in case you missed us saying it quite emphatically several times throughout, we have a brand new and announced next major game project. Salt Sea Chronicles is a flooded world, brand new story-driven adventure game where you investigate a mystery as a ship's whole crew. And it's sort of beautifully designed and animated, as you would expect from a Digue de Fabrique game, and Nils Denneken's beautiful art direction. And we, Sharon and I, and the whole of the writers' room are super proud of the storytelling that we've done with it. So you should wish list Salt Sea Chronicles on Steam right now. The easiest way to do that is to head to saltseachronicles.com to click on the Steam button and do it from there. I'll be back soon with a new episode speaking with another cool thinker and maker in the field of video games. And in the meantime, check out Digue de Fabrique on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, in fact. We can find us in all those places as Gute Fabrique. That's Gutefabrik. This podcast was produced, edited, and sound designed by Tom Wally. Additional production and research by Unaming Kavanagh. Our theme music is by Nick Ellis, whose music you can find under the name Tenby on Bandcamp, Tenby. Stay thoughtful, friends. Take care. Goodbye.